Thomas Cowan. From Galaxy, you're head of tokenization there, and you must be seeing more than most people are in this whole space. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, first, thank you so much for having me. Really, really excited to be here. And I'm lucky to be able to be in this space as head of tokenization. Galaxy is uniquely positioned. We're kind of right at the intersection of crypto and TradFi. So it means that, TradFi folks we have TradFi DNA, so we can speak TradFi when needed, but we're also deep in crypto as well. So we're right at that intersection, and it means that for this part of this cycle, really where previous cycles we've seen progress, but this one, the institutions are coming, as Novo often says, and so it means that we find ourselves well positioned for this adoption. And so as we see people moving from stables to money market funds towards farther out the risk curve, Galaxy's kind of leading that charge and working with different players in the space to be able to make that go from, hey, maybe we could do this, to, hey, let's do this and make it a reality.
Mm-hmm. So let's back up a little bit. Your founder is Mike Novogratz, former Goldman trader, turned crypto evangelist, right? You guys were also instrumental in launching the Bitcoin spot ETFs. Tell us about that. I mean, how was that, coming from traditional TradFi, working with these, crypto ETF issuers, kind of bridging that gap, as you said, between DeFi and TradFi? What was that experience like?
In many ways, I mean, there's so many directions to go there, right? With a Bitcoin product specifically. I think it's interesting that the first product that really took off with a Bitcoin ETF was taking a tokenized asset and wrapping it in a structure that TradFi knows, and then making it more available, right? It's funny that was one of the first things that took off when, part of the reason for the industry is to go the other way, to go from traditional structures towards this new tokenized class. So I think that was one thing that was kind of interesting as we worked through it. I think one thing that we also found fascinating was just the education curve of working with TradFi institutions, whether that be custodians, asset managers, across the board, just starting with, okay, this is what this asset is. This is the value that people see in the space. This is the growth trajectory that we think Galaxy is at, and why we're doing what we're doing. And then thinking through and working with TradFi partners to think, if that's the vision, how do we work together to be able to provide the assets that our clients want. And the Bitcoin ETF was a good example of that with Invesco, who we have worked with for a long time and are a great partner. And so we were glad to be able to see that launch along with the other. I think it was 11 total when it finally did launch. So we were glad to be able to make it happen.
What are the securities that are the most likely to meet the demand, or solve the chicken and egg problem of tokenized trading? Because you have owners, they're going to benefit, and the traders are going to benefit, and the issuers are going to benefit. Who's driving the train there? Who's going to
tokenize equities specifically?
Whatever the security is that's going to be tokenized and meet the demand. What's going to happen first? Because real estate's been at it for a while. Not really a market setup, but
not quite there yet.
So what?
And I think to your point,
because you must be seeing you're talking to all the people that are anxious to get it going, right?
Yeah, and with every cycle, we've seen that there's a lot of issuance demand. People always want to, or at least in our little world, people do always have interest to tokenize things. The question is, where is that secondary market? Where is that demand to create the liquidity and get the flywheel going to actually build out a market on chain? And we think with regulatory clarity, and we think with traditional financial institutions now dipping their toe in after buying the Bitcoin ETF, they're now thinking, okay, we get this space more. They're willing to go, think more about this space. And that's creating that demand that we're seeing. But to your actual point of what part of different asset classes we think we're going to see demand for, stablecoins, we've already kind of seen it, right? It's a more efficient way to move dollars. It gives overseas dollar access to people in emerging economies. Then it also is a major trading pair for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other digitally native assets, right? So stables, I think that train left the station, really well positioned, and we're going to see substantial growth, especially once we get the bill through Congress. Next step is money market funds, which we've seen. Benji led that charge with Franklin Templeton in 2021, and BlackRock, of course, came in April of 24. And so we've seen substantial growth there, and I think that'll continue to be the case. The main demand there is still very much crypto, though. It's where we see people who right now are holding a lot of their portfolio in stables and want to, get access to that risk-free rate. I think Galaxy is a good example, right? Like, just because of the nature of our business, we have to hold a lot of stables on our balance sheet, and we would of course love to be able to hold an asset like a money market fund that can give us the 4%. So now that both of those have very clearly shown product market fit, the next step that we see is kind of, different funds and then structured products. And that's really where I've spent most of my time, is on the structured product side, because there's so much inefficiency in those markets. They benefit a lot from transparency, and the underlying pools of debt and other assets would benefit a lot from smart contracts.
More efficient, yeah. More
Exactly. So that's kind of where we're most excited, because we want to be able to find that use case that we can point to TradFi institutions and say, look, this is faster, better, cheaper. Like there's no, it just is. Like, here's all the data, and this is really where we want to go. And so that's where we're focusing on. I guess the last point that I'm excited by is 6 months ago, I wouldn't have said that we would be moving as quickly on tokenized stocks. But now, because of how quickly the crypto task force is moving and regulators are moving, it seems like we're going to get tokenized equities in a much faster rate than originally anticipated.
How have your conversations with regulators been going? Have you been on the Hill much lately?
I have not. I know that Galaxy has a good reputation and a good set of good set of relationships on the Hill. We very much work to make sure that we are kind of at the intersection of representing the market and also understanding the need for regulators to understand the market, and also create regulations that match where the market is today, and more importantly, where it's going in the future, and balancing the risk reward that's inherent with this technology. And I think it's right on time for the S curve of any kind of major technology. You see this of people innovating a little bit ahead of the rules catching up, and then it becoming a conversation between the rules and the market to make sure that it always matches and creates the rules of the road that allows us to actually create growth. So, we have a long way until we have full clarity, but we're very excited by what we see is going to happen over the next year or so.
And you guys have come back to the U.S. recently. You just rang the NASDAQ opening bell. Talk to us a little bit about that.
It was wonderful. It was very exciting to be able to list on the NASDAQ. And it's funny, from a Galaxy perspective, and those of us in the space for so long, it's the end of a really long journey of finally being able to do that and be a U.S. listed company. But for TradFi, in many ways, that's just the beginning, right? Of like, okay, we really see this as, another company, Coinbase and a few other crypto native players that are finally ready to join the U.S. capital markets. And so we're really excited not only to have achieved that, but really we finally got to the starting line to be able to get the capital we need to build the business that we're looking forward to.
And you guys are still listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, correct?
TSX, we are, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other milestones that you're working towards, or any other things in the space that you're keeping a close eye on?
I think one thing I'll note is not tokenization related, but I think one thing that we're excited by at Galaxy is our data center business, and the fact that we had the Helios asset that we purchased a few years ago, and we're very much shifting that from a Bitcoin mining facility to an AI data center provider. And so that's really allowed us to diversify our revenue stream and build out a revenue base that is less cyclical than crypto, because crypto is known for that volatility.
How much of the cash flow has been shifted from Bitcoin to
I don't
AI?
know the numbers off the top of my head, but I do think of Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, Bitcoin mining versus you're shifting the mining.
Entirely shifting.
Yeah. It's a process though.
It's a process. It takes a long time. And looking at what we're approved for versus where we are now, it's definitely a question of how quickly we can operate, how quickly we can bring in the right players to be able to grow and meet the demand. And so we're excited to build out that part of the business that I think is really well positioned to allow us to kind of be at the forefront of both the AI side and crypto, which builds a competitive business for what we see over the next couple of years.
How do you say Galaxy moving into AI in sort of maybe another direction as well, or?
Maybe. I think we're our DNA is where a lot of people who came from traditional finance fell down the crypto rabbit hole,
right.
And increasingly we're learning more and more about AI and the data center business and what that could look like for a business in the longer term. And I think that we're going to see these two worlds converge more and more, especially as AI can create information so much faster. We're going to need a way to verify it, and the blockchain is a perfect solution to that. So I think over time we're going to see these converge in a way that will be really beneficial, not only to the space, but also to Galaxy itself.
Not to mention having AI agents that can act on behalf of you and transmit value for value. And so that's another world.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thomas, thank you so much for coming on. Looking forward to seeing everything that you guys do.
Yeah, thanks
Exciting
very much.
Absolutely. Great.
Awesome. Thanks.
This show is being brought to you by our sponsor, Truflation. Professional investors and economists and probably any casual observers know that government inflation statistics are only an approximation of what real inflation is. Not only that, but the government has a conflict of interest because high inflation can be so damaging to the economy, the deficit, and our $36 trillion in debt. Trueflation collects over 80 million pricing data points. Most are updated daily to reveal inflation with precision for asset managers, governments, companies, and the general public. Check them out at trueflation.com. We're proud to be sponsored by Foundation. They've created Passport, one of the top-rated Bitcoin hardware wallets, proudly made in the USA. It's fully open source and air-gapped, meaning your Bitcoin stays completely offline and secure. The shocking Bybit exchange hack shows why holding some Bitcoin offline diversifies risk. Now they're launching Passport Prime, your all-in-one solution for not only Bitcoin, but all passwords and 2FA security. Head to foundation.xyz to secure your digital future. Hey, if you like this clip, please hit the subscribe button. You might also want to check out some of the clips I've posted with my many other guests. My interviews all address the simple question, how screwed are we? We ask experts about the problems that make Americans so pessimistic today, but we also explore why there's never been a better time to have been born than today. Join us for perspective on today's challenges and opportunities.